So my goal in life, as I tell everybody, is to retire by 40. I'd like to be selling enough books to be able to just do it full time. I haven't gotten to that point yet.
The book didn't win the first place, but it was one of the top 3. So I was pleased with that.
I have had several people come up and tell me, oh, I know your name.
The first trap is you think you're going to write a book and publishers are going to publish it and it's going to be a hit. It's not that easy. There's lots of books out there. There's lots of competition, and your mainstream writers get first priority. So you're not going to hit it the big times immediately.
I got an email from a gal who said, I ordered your book and I noticed that my maiden name is the same as yours. And she says, we were always told we had relatives in Iowa. Could you be one? Well, we started checking it out, and yes, of course, we're cousins, and just didn't really, that part of the family had moved way back in the 1800s, and we knew nothing really about them. And so they even came to visit and everything after that, all just because she bought my Czech cookbook.
Iowa has a very large, vast variety of authors that is untapped.
My first impression was, oh my gosh, like every third person is writing a book. There's so many people writing. I was so surprised. My next impression is that the books are amazing. There's so much good literature out there. People just don't realize it.
You hear about the big names, but there are some very good writers here in Iowa that write all of the different genres, from kids' books up to, erotica,
We've got some excellent writers in the Des Moines area. They work really hard at their books. The problem is we don't get them self-publishing or anything else. You don't get them past the Iowa border unless you travel there.
There is a lot of talent that is hidden from people that you don't know.
Every writer I've bumped into in Iowa is either someone who wants to help and doesn't know how, and that's the first question they're asking is, how can I help? Or someone who has the capability of helping, and they're just sitting there waiting for you to ask them. I've never met a stronger community of people that just want to be your friend.
We just need to remember we're not in competition with each other. We need to support each other. And by supporting each other, we get our name out there as a group of authors that, hey, Iowa's got something to say.
There are a lot of groups. I think they have become more and more into their own niche.
I meet with a group of writers. It started with 2 of us, expanded to 3. Then we expanded to 4 and 5. It's not a national group or anything. We just meet about every other Wednesday, and we talk more how to support people, how to help people find book signings. We will critique, but we're very kind. We honor the story that the person is writing. We've been a group probably 5 or 6 years, and we get along really well.
I was online, and this Jordan Merrill's name came up, and I was like, oh, she's showing that she wrote a book. And then I looked her up on Facebook and saw she was from Des Moines. So then I thought, you know what, I'm going to reach out to her because I'm getting kind of stuck here. I was trying to get it, this was way in the beginning, I was trying to get it going, and I wasn't sure how to proceed on some of the things. And I saw that she also used the same way to publish the book, the self-publishing. So I sent her a message and said, hey, would you like to meet sometime? So the first time we just got together at Starbucks, I guess it was, and we just talked, and she was kind of at the same point where she hadn't gone too far with this yet either. And so then the next time we met, she knew 2 other people, so next thing there was 4 of us, and then it just kept growing.
They brought up Well, they really haven't had a festival or an event for independent authors, published authors. And so I took on my shoulders of trying to get something together. And so our first one was like at Gray's Lake.
We enjoyed talking to each other. We weren't competitive in any way, so there was no bickering or anything like that. But I just noticed there was a really good feel, a good working together, and we talked to each other about what works for this person as far as writing or publishing or promoting or whatever. And I said, we need a group together so that we can meet, so that we can learn off of each other, because most writer groups were just too far away for us to get to. And we didn't really have anything that we knew of in Des Moines. And so that's how it kind of got started.
Then we met Matt Davenport. He came to our book signing we had at Gray's Lake, and he was talking to us, and it was, we were telling about how we have problems locating editors and this. And he goes, hey, wait a minute, I can do that.
I was actually having brunch with my wife and one of our friends, and we were trying to find something to do afterwards. And we found that Gray's Lake was hosting a author fair. And I was like, how did I not know about this? So I wanted to go down and meet the people. So I just started walking around and meeting everybody. And first person I met was Jordan Merrill. And then she was sitting right with Sue Raymond, Wendy Seifkin, and Lavina Barkis. They were all sitting right there. And they were all members of that group. And the first thing I asked them was, if there was someone who could help you figure out how to do these things, would that be a feasible group to join? And specifically, I mentioned editing and cover art, because I had collected resources. I had a whole Excel sheet of people that I would call on a regular basis. I just finished this story. Would you mind helping me with this part? With their rates and everything. And they actually had more of their own too, but they wanted more options. So what happened was I actually started a company at the time based solely on them saying we have a need, called Davenport Writes, that was based on finding that kind of thing. And that turned into a group that couldn't really take off the ground. And that's when Jordan invited me to their Thursday lunch, or then I think it was Wednesdays. We'd go out and we'd once a month meet at Smoky Row, and we would just sit down, and it was basically drill down on your business model as an author. They've been doing it for years. And I had just joined up. And so it was awesome me being able to come in there and bring some of the tools I had, and them telling me the things they already knew. Like, I didn't know places to go do signings, but they've done signings everywhere at this point, all over the state, multiple states. So they were able to bring that piece, and it became a great discussion point. Whenever anything would come up, it was a great copacetic relationship.
Writing is kind of a lonely endeavor, if you will. So to have somebody that is willing to sit down with you and encourage you to get that next book written, or to help to look through the book for you, give you some critique tips, is always beneficial.
We all write different. We have one that writes Stephen King horror. We have fantasies. We have more love stories. We have sweet love stories. Mine are a little spicy. We have a woman that writes sweet love stories, and one that writes children's fantasies. But we can all go to a book signing together and support each other in the genre that we write. We're not threatened by other people. I'm not threatened by other writers. They write what they write. I write what I write. People will like me. Some people will like them. It's okay.
I tend to write what I want to write. I like a lot of Cthulhu fiction, H.P. Lovecraft stuff, so early 30s horror. It's kind of gotten an upswing lately. In the 90s and 80s, I guess, it got picked up as a kind of RPG role-playing game kind of thing. I just fell into the stories. And so a lot of my stuff I write now is centered around that kind of horror, weird science aspect.
My son and I, we write together. We write young adult fantasy or new adult fantasy. It's just one of those things that we work really well together. We work off of each other.
I basically write what I classify as sweet romance, stories of family and friendship and love.
My latest writing is more of a bio about myself, growing up in different stages and different places. the one book, the second book I had published was my military experience. The first one was more of a family record that I wanted to be more permanent. And it was my great-grandmother's poems and the history about her.
You can't really nail me down on a genre because I write a variety of genre. I write crime, murder, mystery, drama, fantasy, children's book. I'm illustrating my children's book right now.
I enjoy writing kind of family dramas. My first book was a little bit more of a thriller, a little more turmoil, if you will. And then my newest book is a little more family drama. So there's like, just your natural issues, family fights, hardships, stuff like that.
I write romance/love stories, and the genre, I go to all different genres. I have contemporary, futuristic, paranormal, and historical. My last book was my first historical fiction romance.
I don't know if I have a thing because I've done a lot of varied types of projects. But my first book was just a book of short stories because I couldn't imagine putting 50,000 words all on a page at once. My next one was a Czechoslovakian cookbook with all of my grandma's recipes. And believe it or not, that's my big seller. It always will be my seller. I always sell every single month, every week, I sell some of those books because there just aren't very many Czech cookbooks out there. Way back, I was always going to be a writer. That's all there's to it. I was always going to write a book. But when I was in college, I was too busy. Then I got married and had kids. And then I started 2 businesses and was on city council and had no time. After my kids were out of school and I sold my business, then I realized I didn't have any excuses anymore. So I sat down to try to figure it out.
First, you have to have a story. Definitely have a lot, your supporters to read it. There's quite a few authors that, come from, they have to start somewhere. Whether they're well known or they're not well known. They started out, just writing a notebook.
The first thing I learned was I didn't know anything about Word, Microsoft Word. Everything has a format it's got to be in. So formatting was something I had to teach myself. There are certain companies online like Smashwords that have guides you can download. So I started reading all of those.
I didn't know anything about writing a book. I didn't intend to really write a book. My daughter had wrote a book, and she got with a group, and I was there as a moral support.
We tried to do the traditional route of submitting to agents, and I went to the library. I looked up they have books that you can do, and they show you the different agents, what genre they're in, and who's accepting applications at this time, who's not, how to submit formats and all that good stuff. And I did that for 2 years, from 2009 to just before 2011, or 2008 to 2011. And I did that for almost 2 years, and then I finally said, Charlie, we are just not getting accepted. And I talked to a gentleman who I found out he was an agent, he had retired, and I told him the problems that we were having, and he said, well, you're 2 unknown people, you're 2 people, and the genre that you cover with the characters that you have in your story, there's too many for one book. We had zombies, dragons, and werewolves. And they said they want stories with either zombies or just dragons or just werewolves. They didn't want, and there was 2 of us that were unknown. So I said, I guess the next step is to figure out how to publish.
And so the more they talked about self-publishing, they started talking about where to get it self-published and where not to get self-published, because with my daughter, we spent a lot of money to get her books published and not much results as far as marketing and such.
They're not going to promote you even on a traditional publisher, you've got to promote yourself.
Vanity publishes where you pay them and they will publish your book.
It's usually 2 or 3 editors or publishers that can gather your group of people that you need to publish and then they pay the stuff for all your fees, and then they recoup their fees before they pay you royalties.
People that have been in the business longer say it's a bad thing to get your book published that way. Submitted my books to editors and agents. They say they don't like the way I write. The people that read my books like the way I write, so I've got to stick with that. So I just self-publish. I had one book that was published by a small press, but they folded, and so I'm back to self-publishing it. And I think I like the self-publishing because I have control over everything. My cover, my editing.
I did go with the small press for one of my stories. I turned to indie publishing because they wanted to change the characters, and it's like, no, you changed that much, it's no longer the character. It's someone completely different, and the character in my head saying, don't do that, don't do that, I'm going to get you, don't do that.
The traditional publishing route I did not do, basically because I didn't really start writing until I was in my mid-50s. So the time frame that they kept saying it would take you to get a traditional publisher just did not seem feasible to me. So I did the self-publishing route. My first book, A Case of Hearts, was first published by a small publisher called The Right Place in Pella. And then my second one, Matthew Davenport helped me publish. So the problem with both of those were neither one were people that were in a position to help you promote the books. So rather than to continue to pay different fees to them, this last summer I took both of my books back on my own and then had to go back out and republish them on my own. When you self-publish, you have to be able to do everything. So I'm not good at running the computer, to say. So to have other people help me do that has been a blessing, but also, I guess, kind of a curse, because then it's something that you can't just do yourself. So it ends up costing you some money to have people do those things for you, too.
First, I send the book out to my beta readers. I have about 4 or 5 of them, and they will tell me if the story makes sense and if it's in good order.
They tell me, hey, wait a minute, they were redheaded. Did you dye their hair? Why are their eyes colored different? You have to keep log on what you did, otherwise it doesn't work right. They do a lot of catching the mistakes like that.
Then I send it out to an editor, and we have several with our group that we can go to.
I actually started reaching out on Facebook to any friends of mine who had any editing skill whatsoever. And I said, hey, I'd be willing to pay if you guys are willing to do this. And a friend of mine from way back, Kelsey Boyce, came out and immediately was like, I'll read anything you got.
It's finding an editor that is also reasonably priced, and one that will take the time to actually catch all your errors. I know I have a lot of errors. I love telling stories, but there's probably a lot of but a lot of people write different ways.
Once they have edited the grammar and all that, then it comes back to me. I make the changes, and then it's set in stone, so to speak.
I kept going through different websites, and I didn't want to pay a ton of money for my book, because the very first book I did, my book of short stories, I didn't feel was probably, gonna pay millions of dollars by any means. So I just wanted to figure it out, and I decided if I was gonna do a lot of this, because I knew I was also gonna do children's stories, because I already had some of them written. I just needed to figure out the rest of it. So I just went through different websites, and then I decided CreateSpace was the best. I found out it was owned by Amazon. You literally could publish without costing anything, and that really hit home with me. That sounded like the way to go, since it was more of a hobby than really thinking I'm going to make this my living. So I started with that, and then I found out that a lot of the other people that we met through our group also used CreateSpace.
which you put in your manuscript, and then they'll send you, I think they send you kind of like a template to put your cover on there. I do all my own covers, again, to keep my rights.
Cover art, I taught myself Photoshop, and I think I got decent at it. I wasn't that great, though, so I did all my own cover art. And then from there, it was a matter of putting all those pieces together and learning more about the platforms you can sell your books on, like the main ones, Amazon's Kindle, but there was also Barnes & Noble's Nook, there was Kobo out of Canada. There's a whole bunch of different platforms, and now there's even more. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. I needed to know not only how to upload them onto there, but also how to use what tools they provided, because each one of them provides their own tools to increase your marketing efforts, including ad space or simply just showing you your numbers and how you're selling. And then at that point, I'd also been in sales for a couple of years, so I started knowing about peaks and troughs in sales, giving myself a monthly quota. If I'm only selling one book a month, that's not good enough. So let's give myself a challenge. What do I have to do to sell 5 books a month? And I started giving myself that quota. And even if it was just as much as, and you ask anybody I work with, I've done this, hey, can I borrow 99 cents? Well, yeah. Well, instead of giving me the 99 cents, here's a link to my book. Why don't you just buy my book for me? And anything I could do to increase to reach my quota that I'd set for myself. There was a lot of work in self-publishing just a single novel. Once it's out there, even if you're going out there and begging everybody for 99 cents, at the end of the day, you've still got to keep Facebook, Twitter, even if you don't like those platforms. If you get one sale every couple months out of Twitter, then there's probably a good reason to learn how to automate your Twitter to sell maybe that one book. So there was a lot of self-teaching.
They say networking with Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, do all that. Hasn't happened yet. You got to find your niche of your people, and that's harder than most people think.
I am on Amazon. I sell a little on Amazon, but basically my biggest sales come from me.
I sell books on eBay also, so it's kind of fun to get the ding of an email to say that one sold, that PayPal's been paid, and to go and wrap it up and sell it out.
I have had really good luck going to craft fairs and selling my book at craft fairs. Not necessarily so many over the Amazon and that type of thing, but on a direct, when you talk to somebody directly and you tell them about the story, people seem much more interested.
I'm a firm believer that while marketing doesn't really work very well, aside from writing another book, face-to-face selling is kind of my strong suit. I'm great at shaking a hand, I'm great at talking to people, and just saying, hey, while you're here, mind taking a look at my books, and giving them the quick elevator pitch on my books. So I was doing about 4 to 5 a year for a couple of years there, including the Comic-Cons and different local Iowa events, some at wineries.
Author signings, they're becoming a lot more common, where when Jordan and I first started, you really didn't have any at all around Iowa. And they're becoming more common, and the people are beginning to realize that, hey, we've got people here that know how to write.
At first we went to arts and crafts shows, and actually we were very well received because we were something different in the art and craft shows. Then we kind of got into author signings, and we've traveled to South Dakota, Canada, Illinois to do them. And there's also some around town. We go to the Good Guys. We have our own Iowa Author Fest that we put together every year, that any author, is free to come, any genre, any author. We just want to celebrate authors in Iowa. There are several of them.
And now we have our books at Windy store in Marshalltown.
Everybody was saying that the bookstores are dead. And I said, if you just donate books, I'll do the rest. And so we did, and I had books of my own because my son, my husband, my kids are all big readers, and 3 bookshelves and 60 books, and we started a bookstore. And now we've got over 10,000 books.
There's 2 kinds of writers. There's the pansters and the outliners. And the pansters just sit down and write. That's what I do. My head tells me what to write. I have no idea what's going to happen. My characters take over and away I go. Other people outline the books and everything before they even start writing. It depends on what works best for you. There's no right or wrong about it.
Get it down on paper. Go to CreateSpace is now merged with Kindle, so they would have to go to that website. And it does literally walk you through a lot of the process now. It has improved tremendously compared to it was when I first started. It has hints along the way, and it gives you different procedures in how to do it along the way as you're working on it. So they have made it simpler. But I guess the biggest thing is just get it down on paper. One way or the other. Put it on your computer, put it on paper, get it down. And that's your first step. You've just got to get it down there.
Don't worry about spelling or grammar, or even if it makes sense. Just write the story, get it out of your head, and then you can go back and clean it up and move stuff around. It's not written in stone until you publish it. So you can work with it after that, but you have to get the story out of your head.
The best part of indie publishing, of self-publishing, not just indie publishing, is that you can go back and fix your mistakes. And it's not hoopla. You don't have to beg everybody you don't have to beg an agent, hey, can I get that contract edited? Hey, can I get this fixed? You can go in, fix it, upload the new version, and everything's better. And that was probably one of the best things about self-publishing.
Reach out to people, get into writers groups. On Facebook is definitely a big one to do. That's how I got started, was Facebook. I never thought I'd be on computers much at all when we first started, but yeah, Facebook, Twitter, whatever is your thing that you can connect with people and then meet with them if you can, if it's possible. I mean, we've got writers group up in northern Iowa, we've got here in Des Moines and Cedar Rapids, so they're here, and I'm going to try and start one in Marshalltown.
Having a group like the Thursday morning group kind of helps keep us all motivated, keeps us all kind of together, and even though life sometimes gets in the way of being able to meet and do those things, you always know that you can reach out to those people and that they're going to be there to help you.